Hello and welcome back to the shop. In this video, we're going to be replacing the rear struts or shock absorbers, whatever you want to call them, on my 2015 Dodge Start. Now this is not a very complicated process, but it is complicated if you don't know what you're doing. So I'll try and make this video short and sweet, show you the tools that you need and the challenges that you might encounter when replacing this, and how to just make it simple and make it a breeze to do. Because when I was doing this, I watched a couple tutorials of how other people did it, and I had to take it apart and put it back together probably 3 different times before I finally just figured it out. So keep watching, and let's get into the tools that you'll need for the job. The tools you'll need for this job are a jack and jack stands. A pry bar is optional. You'll also need this trim popper tool. For sockets, I used an 8mm and a 10mm for the fender liner, a 3/4 inch or a 19mm to remove the wheel bolts, and then a 15 or 17 for putting the struts together. I'll explain when we get to that point in the video. And then I used an 18mm, either a socket or you can use a wrench for installing the lower strut, depending on if your replacement part comes with the nut welded onto it or if it's just loose. You have to be able to hold the other side when you're tightening it. The shocks also use external Torx sockets. I did not have these, so I had to run to the store and make sure I bought the right sizes before I did this job. The upper mounts use an E14 or an EP14, and then the lower ones use a E18 or EP18. Different stores call them slightly different things, but what you need to know is the external Torx, size 14 and size 18. And then miscellaneous socket wrenches, extensions, and then you need a torque wrench rated for up to 100 foot-pounds for retorquing the wheels when you put them back on. So these two are the same size. This one's a little bigger, so I would say go with the one from Harbor Freight. The one from AutoZone only goes up to 14, but you need this 18 for the lower shock mount. Make sure you have all the tools and parts you need before you start this job. For the shock absorbers, you can get these from pretty much any auto parts store. You can go to AutoZone, O'Reilly's, Advance Auto, Napa, or you can get them from a Dodge dealership. I also recommend buying top mounts and the dust boots for the shock assembly. You have to get these from the dealership. You can't get these from traditional auto parts stores. I used the Mopar website for this. It made it easier. You could have it shipped directly to your address, or you could do what I did. You can have them drop it off at a local dealership, and then you can pick it up in person in order to save some money on shipping. The reasons why you want these extra parts, I'll explain more in depth later in the video, but it makes the whole process so much easier and faster. I wish I had just done this from the start instead of taking the car apart, putting it back together, and then having to take it apart again later and just struggle with getting everything apart. So that's what I recommend, but if you really want to risk it, watch the rest of the video. And see kind of the struggles I ran into trying to reuse the top mounts and the dust boot. On a quick side note, the website I'm using to look up parts diagrams is store.mopar.com. It's been super useful for me since I do all the maintenance on my Dart myself. You can look up any Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, I think Ram products as well. If you want to see parts diagrams and look up like part numbers, or if you want to see what thread size a certain fastener is, you can go on and you can click on just the various categories. So like for this video, I clicked on rear suspension, and you can see all the parts that make up the rear suspension. It's just a helpful resource. It's free. You don't have to make an account. It doesn't cost you anything. I'm not being paid to promote it. It's just a useful tool that I use. So if you want to do anything like that or look up parts diagrams, it's a helpful tool. So check it out if you want. To remove the rear shocks, you will need to remove the rear wheels, so loosen the lug nuts, jack up the car, and finish removing the wheel bolts. Next step is going to be removing the fender liner. You can see the top bolts through the gap, but it isn't quite big enough to get a socket onto the bolts. I found that you don't have to remove the entire fender liner, just the front half. An 8mm bolt is used under the car to hold the front wind deflector thingy. and then use a 10mm socket to remove the nuts and washers from the front couple of studs, and then use the trim popper tool to remove the plastic trim fastener things. Then you can kind of just fold the fender liner behind the wheel hub and brake caliper so it's out of the way. On the left-hand side of the car, you have one extra step because it has the fuel filler neck. There's a bolt, it's like a 10mm, I think, that holds the fuel filler neck to the car. So if you take that bolt out, you can kind of just move the filler neck out of the way enough, and you don't have to disconnect anything else. You can get to the bolts by just kind of pushing it out of the way. Now you can use the external Torx size 14 socket to remove the top 2 bolts, and the size 18 socket to remove the lower bolt. Slide the base of the strut towards the center of the car until the top of the strut can clear the fender. The rear strut is now able to be removed. Okay, so this is our old shock absorber. This is our new shock absorber. What we have to do is transfer this top aluminum piece and the dust shield over to the new one. So the only problem is trying to undo this nut that's at the end. If we kind of slide the dust shield down, if you try and just put a socket on there and loosen it, it doesn't want to turn. So if you hold it, then really try and twist it, you can see it's just spinning. This shaft is just rotating inside here. So what do you do if it doesn't work? Well, it's got this flat part up here on the end. So you can hold on to that with your pliers. So you just grab onto that, and then you take your socket, and you can't actually get your socket in there. So what you do is you take a wrench, right? And then, well, you can't actually get a wrench down in there, right? Because you can't, it's like, even if you use this side, it can't go down far enough to grab onto it. So what do? Well, you get to this point and you're stuck, so you look up another YouTube tutorial, and the guy in that tutorial says, oh, just hold the part that's spinning, hold this part, because this can spin inside of here, right? So holding this part ain't gonna do anything, because this part spins separately. So somehow you have to hold this. So the other video I watched said, oh, just, use this, and the rubber boot kind of has enough friction, you'll be able to hold it. Well, the point is, I tried it, and it just spins inside this rubber. It's not actually very sticky, so that solution didn't work. Well, I tried, if this is getting replaced anyway, it's okay if it gets damaged. So I just tried clamping onto here and turning this, but this is shiny and polished and chromed, so the pliers just spun. Vice grips did the exact same thing. So either way, you cannot hold onto this and spin this, because this is too smooth, it'll just spin. There's no way to get friction on it. I even tried wrapping it in a rubber glove to see if that would help, get some friction so it wouldn't turn, and it just kept turning. It was at this point in the video I started trying just, anything I could think of to try and hold onto this impossible to hold thing so I could undo the nut that's keeping it together. I tried one of those pass-through like socket wrenches where it's kind of open in the middle, so you can try and reach in and use pliers to hold onto the flat part that's on the top of the shock absorber. Unfortunately, that space is still really small, so the only way you can get in there to hold it is with needle nose pliers or with the needle nose vice grips, and it just kept slipping right off. There was no way to hold that inside of the kind of hollowed out open center sockets. So I went back to trying to hold onto the rod side of the shock absorber. I tried wrapping it in duct tape and then using pliers to hold the duct tape to see if that gave it enough friction, but it just ripped the duct tape apart and it didn't stick to the shiny polished part of the shock absorber. I tried using flex tape because that would be even stickier, and it just, tore the flex tape and then left a bunch of glue residue on it. So nope. So when you can't get this one apart, just build a new one. Honestly, this is $30, $35. This is $30, $35. Just spend a little extra money. Now I can just go bolt this right in instead of trying to mess with this or cut this or torch it, because there's a little rubber like ball joint in there with a seal. I don't want to get that melted with the torch, so just get a new piece. Honestly, it sucks, but yeah, yours probably isn't going to come off like mine because there's no cover on this. This gets rusty, so even though it's only like 22 foot-pounds from the factory, it just gets stuck and you're never going to get it off. Even trying to just hold it with the, with the rubber in the middle isn't going to work, because this is going to be a way higher torque to take it off because it's rusted solid. So just build a new one. You can hold it enough to get the new nut torqued on, and it's a lot simpler. So I'm just gonna throw these new shocks in and be done, because I'm tired of messing with it. So that's just my advice. If for some reason you really can't afford it, I don't know, drive on bad shocks for a little while, go to work for another week and save up, because yeah, I don't know how you're supposed to get this apart. You'd have to do it this way pretty much. To assemble the new shock absorbers, simply put the new dust boot over the new shock absorber, put on the top mount, and then you can tighten the nut by hand. I ended up putting it in the vise to kind of hold the dust boot against the rod. You're able to get enough friction to get the nut tightened to torque spec, but it does not provide enough grip to take apart the old shock absorber because, as I mentioned previously, it's too rusted. Even with an impact, I wasn't able to get the old parts off, so just buy the new parts, assemble them on the bench. It's really simple. For me, this was the longest part of the process because I had to keep doing trial and error to get it ready to this point in the process where we're ready to install the new parts. So hopefully this video helped save you multiple weeks of trial and error and lots of money spent on different tools that didn't end up helping. But if you get to this point in the video, then you are almost done. Now you just have to install the new parts. Install the new shocks by getting the strut into position. I use the jack underneath the lower control arm to help align the top of the strut. You can also use a pry bar to help get it into position. Install the upper and lower mounting bolts, but only torque the upper mounting bolts. The lower bolt has to be torqued when the vehicle is at ride height. So, reinstall the fender liner and the wheel.
Hindsight is fleeting when your heart's bleeding and all you can see is red till you discover it is within each other.
Lower the vehicle to the ground and get underneath the car to torque the lower mount bolts to spec.
Let you forgive and make amends. If I had known then what I know now, I wouldn't have said what I said. I took the long road, thought I'd be better on my own. Sometimes what's right is wrong, and instead
Don't forget to finish torquing your wheel bolts too.
I was too young, and I didn't.
And with that, we are going to wrap up the video for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you found it helpful, please leave a like on the video. If you want to see any other projects or automotive content. You can see I have no shortage of things to work on. Definitely subscribe. I upload about once a month, so I won't clog up your inbox or anything with notifications. That's gonna do it for this video, so thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.